A state report finding that assisted living facilities are lacking oversight. We'll hear from an expert on the report and the changes they'd like to see. Hello and welcome to Empire State Weekly. I'm John Gray.
And I'm Jamie DeLine. The New York State Department of Health is not adequately overseeing adult care facilities. That's according to an audit by the Comptroller's office.
Now, there are over 500 adult care facilities across the state. This audit sampled 30 facilities over a 6-year period, finding 21 of the 30 did not have inspections conducted during the required time frame, which is every 12 to 18 months, some going years without an inspection. Other issues named in this report were crumbling stairs, kitchen appliances not being at the right temperatures, as well as alcohol and marijuana paraphernalia in the administrator's office. The audit did note that the Department of Health has seen staffing shortages during the pandemic.
The Comptroller's report made several recommendations to correct the issues cited in the report, including allocating resources to increase DOH staffing.
In response to that report, the Department of Health released a statement saying that they have made significant progress toward returning to normal timelines when it comes to those inspections. They also explained they have monitored these care facilities, saying, quote, facilities were subject to comprehensive, focused infection control and complaint investigations, and in some cases were subject to enforcement actions.
Joining us now to give additional insight on the Comptroller's report is Christina Audi. She's the Executive Director for New York State Center for Assisted Living. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for inviting and having me.
So there's a difference, right, between a nursing home and an assisted living facility. Can you talk about that and the differences?
Sure. So when we think about assisted living, we're kind of thinking more of a social model and less of a medical model. That's probably the biggest difference. So the acuity levels are usually vastly different when you're looking at the two.
And when it comes to this recent report that was issued from the Comptroller's office, what did you find to be surprising in it?
So I would say that one of the most notable and concerning findings from the report was that surveys, which are required to be conducted between every 12 to 18 months, were sometimes taking up to 5 years to complete. So these delays can prevent providers from making any sort of changes from potential deficient practices in a timely manner and hindering their ability to implement any sort of corrective actions that might improve outcomes for residents.
So when surveillance takes place, what exactly are they looking for?
So they're looking at a few different areas. The team will go in, they're usually there for a couple of days, sometimes a little bit more. They're looking at the program as a whole, they're looking at medication and the administration behind it, fire and safety and nutrition. So they go in and it's not planned, they show up and then they're kind of just looking at the program as a whole. They'll talk to the residents, they'll talk to the staff, just to kind of get a feel for everything and look at documentation as well, just to ensure that they're in compliance with the rules and regulations.
And now if they aren't in compliance, they have to, issue a report, right? How soon does that report get to these facilities?
So it should be within about 30 days, ideally.
And is that typically what happens, or is there more of a delay?
I would say according to the report, they did find that there were some delays in getting that information back to the facilities. Some of them have reported that there were delays, and then others haven't received them in a timely manner. So it was interesting to see what the report did have to say about that.
And based on what you're hearing from these adult care facilities, do they add up to what was issued in the Comptroller's report?
I think it's a little bit of a mix, to be honest. I know that the Department of Health is struggling with staffing, just as the providers are, the whole industry really is right now. So they have reported some delays, and we are working with the Department of Health, the other associations, the providers, trying to collaborate with them so that we can serve them best and try and improve the circumstances behind the surveys and the timeliness.
And I know the Comptroller's report talked about, needing more money to be allocated for hiring for the Department of Health. Do you think that will significantly help the way things are going?
I would hope so. I know that they do have a lot of trouble right now with hiring staff, as does everywhere. And if it's something that people out there are looking for, higher compensation, then it's a hope that will help.
And what would you like New Yorkers to know about adult care facilities that maybe they don't quite understand?
Sure. I think that it's really important to recognize the dedication of the providers who are continuing to deliver high quality care. This report is not inclusive of all of them, and we are confident that through continued collaboration with the Department of Health, the stakeholders, the associations, the providers, that we can enhance the regulatory process in a way that will ultimately benefit the residents and ensure consistency, transparency, and accountability across the system as a whole.
And there's over 500 of these adult care facilities right here in New York State?
There are, yes.
And I'm sure there's like a bunch of different regions. Is there anything that you can talk to about, is there a difference between the regions when it comes to adult care facilities or anything like that the report found?
I wouldn't say that there was anything really regionally. I think across the board they're seeing maybe the same types of delays in all of the regions, but overall I wouldn't say that there's one that really stands out more than another.
All right, we'll have to leave it right there. Christina, Audie, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
More funding is coming to services that support crime victims when we return here from the state agency taking steps to bring services to those who need it most. If you have a comment or story idea, let us know. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X at WTEN.
Welcome back to Empire State Weekly. This week, state officials announcing new funding for organizations and programs around the state that support victims of crimes.
The new funding coming as a part of plans made in the 2025 budget.
Over $370 million being committed to over 200 organizations, hospitals, and nonprofits over the next 3 years. The goal here, help survivors and their families for as long as needed after suffering from a crime.
The deadline to apply for a grant is in March. The state is aiming to assist some 250 programs throughout these grants. Assistance is provided for victims of a variety of crimes. The funding is insured regardless of any cuts at the federal level.
Joining us now to give additional insight into the funding for victim services, the director of the State Office of Victim Services, Bea Hansen. Bea, thanks for coming on the show today.
Great to be here. Thank you so much.
This has to be a good time to be you because you're talking about this around the state. These are important dollars that are being spent, right?
They are important dollars. So we have just about $380 million over the next 3 years that we're going to be used to fund victim service providers all across the state. So these are community-based organizations, prosecutors' offices, law enforcement offices to help victims of child abuse, domestic violence, sexual abuse, and gun violence.
And this money is already allocated, right? So it's not going to be taken away if any federal issue comes up, right?
Yeah, well, the Governor Hochul had a lot of foresight in putting aside up to $100 million a year for the next 3 years to deal with any kind of reductions we might see from the federal government. The federal funding that we get is from fines and fees for mostly white-collar prosecution of crimes. We know that those prosecutions are likely to be going down from what our experience was in the first Trump administration. So any reductions in that, I think we're in a good space in New York State compared to a lot of other states in terms of what the governor's put into it to make sure that we don't see reductions in this area.
People love to complain when they see the tax money come out of their paychecks. Oh, they're always taking my money and I don't get anything out of it. But that's not really fair. I mean, I'm looking, it lists 230 unique places where the money's going. Talk about a couple of the specifics, like in somebody's neighborhood where this money might be going, like to a domestic violence shelter or things like that?
Yeah, sure. So it might be going to a domestic violence shelter in your community where if somebody's a victim of domestic violence, if they need to leave their home, they can go there and get counseling services and access to any kind of support they need. It goes to prosecutors' offices to help victims. One of the other areas that we focus on is compensation for victims of crime. So if a crime victim has like medical expenses expenses or mental health expenses that they need covered that they don't have insurance for. We can cover those kinds of things. It's for a community-based organization. Maybe somebody only speaks Spanish, so we fund programs that are embedded in Spanish-speaking communities to be able to provide services to those communities, so somebody can go to a place where somebody looks like them and speaks like them. It speaks the same language they speak.
And that's so important.
Yeah. Yeah, because we know so many times victims don't want to go forward. They often don't want to go to law enforcement because they feel like it might not be a safe place for them to go. So having community-based organizations are really critical. Like, for example, in Buffalo, we just funded a new organization that focuses on Muslim communities. So providing services for that community, or the Karen Society that focuses on Burma and Myanmar. So a lot of community-based organizations in addition to kind of large social service organizations.
One that jumped out at me, and it's really a sad one, but something you don't think about in the line items of where somebody's going, increasing reimbursement for funeral and burial expenses. No one thinks about that. Someone's a victim of crime, maybe their child gets killed, God forbid. Yeah, they might lock somebody up and there's trials, and that's the stuff we cover in the media, but who's there to help make sure this child gets a proper funeral, and is there some money for that now?
Yeah, the whole kind of compensation piece. So the one piece is funding for these victim assistance programs, and the other chunk of money we have is compensation for victims. And the idea is that when you've been a victim of a crime, your life is pretty shattered, and can be. And how do we provide the support that people need to make people feel more whole? So having burial expenses, for example, like that funding has been $6,000 as a cap for the last 15 years. We just doubled it to $12,000, which will really cover people's burial expenses. We increased money for scams, for kind of financial fraud and scams, which I think historically we've kind of thought as the elderly being the victims of that, but really everybody is a victim now on their phone with scams and fraud. And so we've increased funding that we'd be able to reimburse people if they've been a victim of a scam as well.
And if I could remind Jamie, following up on that one, people understand if you're, for lack of a better word, poor, and it's only $300 you got scammed, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is maybe that's a third of their rent that month, or maybe that's their entire grocery budget for a couple of weeks, right?
Exactly, and I think that's really the focus, is for people who don't have insurance, don't have, that $300 does mean a lot of money. Like, we were able to reimburse people for financial fraud and abuse for up to $100, which isn't a lot. So now it's increased to $2,500. So, I think the focus of the governor and the focus of our work has really been, how do we really help victims in a better way, because it's devastating. And New York, which is very unique in the whole country, is New York has no cap on medical expenses or mental health expenses. So somebody who's been a victim of a crime, and oftentimes like with sexual assault, people don't really think about needing counseling and wanting that right away.
Sure.
They might come back years later and we can still cover that. Or somebody who's had a physical injury and has needs a wheelchair or needs some sort of modifications in their home, we can do that kind of work as well.
And one of the programs that I was reading up on was that if there is a survivor who doesn't know whether or not they want to press charges, that there's programs to help them determine whether or not they want to do that, right?
Exactly. And that's really what the 250 different programs that we fund across the state is about, is to help people figure out, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to press charges? And if you do, we can accompany you to court. We can accompany you to the police to help you with that. If you don't want to, that's okay too. Some people, there's people concerned about law enforcement because of their immigration status or experiences that they've had that have been negative with the police. So we want to make sure that people get services even if they don't want to go to law enforcement, but also help them if they do. We often find that once somebody gets the support that they need and deserve, that they might decide to go to law enforcement and press charges. Okay. And maybe not.
We'll have to leave it there. Bea Hansen, thank you for putting a voice to all this important issue.
Thank you.
So much.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
The Trump administration escalating the mass deportation effort, according to advocates down in New York City. They say that ICE agents are changing some tactics and grabbing people more right outside of these immigration courtrooms. We'll hear from Henry Rossoff down in the city of what he's seeing. Welcome back. New York State continuing to feel the impact of the Trump administration's aggressive deportation policy in the wake of the ongoing raids and arrests by ICE agents.
Several lawmakers this week pushing for changes that would keep ICE agents from wearing masks, as some are seen wearing them while conducting raids. The focus coming as some immigration experts in New York City report migrants have been detained while exiting immigration court.
Henry Rossoff with Pix 11 down in New York City, bringing us more.
Immigration enforcement officers have been targeting courts for at least 2 months now, looking for people to deport. But this new development is basically people who still have pending cases before immigration court. So a judge has not decided if they can stay or go, will walk out of their proceedings and then still be immediately arrested by ICE agents and scheduled for deportation.
She asked, "Where is my father? Where is my daddy?"
6-year-old Soya stood with her mother, who was holding back tears just minutes after leaving immigration court. The family from Honduras says they came to court to continue their asylum claim after legally being allowed to enter the country. Their pastor says a judge gave them until October to come back with an attorney and continue the case. But waiting ICE agents grabbed Soya's dad anyway.
That's a lot to bear, particularly if you have a little girl around that age.
Local elected officials say what they saw Tuesday in federal immigration court marks an escalation in the Trump administration's mass deportation effort. They say immigration officials are not only arresting those leaving court who've had their cases dismissed, meaning they have no right to stay in the country, but have begun grabbing anyone at court, even those with pending cases.
These buildings have essentially ceased to be courthouses. These buildings are essentially abduction traps.
Congressman Dan Goldman represents Lower Manhattan and met with Soya's family outside of court. He says this is now happening to dozens of families each day in New York City. Goldman says immigration officials have been emboldened by the passage of President Trump's, quote, big beautiful bill, which devotes tens of billions of additional dollars to hiring and giving bonuses to immigration agents and setting up more detention facilities and overall encouraging more aggressive immigration enforcement.
A horrific bill that will take health care, food assistance, school loans away from everyday Americans in order to pay for not only tax cuts for the billionaires, but to increase the budget for ICE.
During a cabinet meeting Tuesday, President Trump continues to cast the mass deportation effort as one that is targeting criminals and the worst of the worst, even though we've seen with our own eyes evidence to the contrary. The president also says that he's working on a sort of work program to allow some people who are undocumented to stay in the country. In Lower Manhattan, Henry Rossoff, Pix 11 News.
Inflation refund checks, the measure Governor Hochul touted as a part of the budget, will be heading out to New Yorkers this fall. The Department of Taxation and Finance giving the update that payments will start this October. They will be sent to New Yorkers who qualify, so there is no need to apply. The one-time payments are supposed to ease the effects of the affordability crisis by returning a portion of inflated sales taxes already paid by New Yorkers. Critics of the checks have argued that the $2 billion earmarked for the checks could have been used to offset spending cuts at the federal level. The state's transition to a single payroll processor for the Consumer-Directed Personal Assistance Program, or CDPAP, is under fire. Families and caregivers say the system is broken. Public Partnerships LLC, PPL, is now the sole fiscal intermediary for CDPAP. But since the April transition, lawsuits and complaints have been mounting, including allegations of wage theft, missed payments, and serious technical issues with the payroll system.
They're not getting paid. They're not getting paid correctly. They're not getting paid at all. They're getting paid late. We have clients, and we've spoken to other folks who have used any number of those different systems and have had problems with each and every one of them.
The Department of Health and PPL have not responded to requests for comment. A postponed state Senate hearing on the transition is now set for August 21st. Recent violence in Albany has state lawmakers introducing new legislation that would prevent anyone under 21 from being able to purchase a flare gun. Consequences include a fine up to $500 for the first-time offenders and a Class A misdemeanor for repeat offenders. The second bill makes it illegal to buy or use a flare gun with criminal intent. The senator says right now it's considered a reckless endangerment charge. We asked Albany County Sheriff Craig Apple if flare guns are becoming a problem in the city of Albany. He shares his thoughts on the legislation.
We had an incident a few weeks prior to that where we found a young individual in possession of one that was modified to shoot a real round as opposed to a flare. And it did, in fact, fire. We tested it. As we continue to work hard to get illegal firearms off our streets, you know, they're going to find alternative means. And you can ban a flare gun and they're going to move on to something else.
Stick around. Be back with a look at the week ahead in just a bit.
If you have a comment or story idea, let us know. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X at WTEN.
Finally, in Empire State Weekly, we're keeping an eye on a unique competition returning for its second year here in New York State. State opening up applications for their Coolest Thing Made in New York contest. The goal here is to highlight innovation in New York's manufacturing industry.
The competition is open to manufacturers and features things made from around the state. Last year, Night Ride Thermal, a thermal imaging camera manufacturer based in Brooklyn, won the contest with more than 40,000 votes. The deadline to apply is July 18th, with public voting starting July 28th.
We'll be sure to keep an eye on this and bring you the update, maybe see who won. For now, from all of us here at Empire State Weekly, I'm John Gray.
And I'm Jamie DeLine. We'll see you here next week.
And don't forget, you can watch this show, Empire State Weekly, all over New York State. Here's the full schedule of the show on 10 TV stations across the great state of New York.